Top 10 Effective Tips for Learning English. Welcome, everyone, to another session here at the Explore English Online, where we dive into the world of language learning, offering tips, tricks, and stories that help you on your journey to mastering English. Today, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you. Whether you're a beginner just starting out or someone who's been learning English for a while and looking for ways to improve, this session is packed with useful advice, examples, and insights. Now, before we dive in, I want to take a moment to tell you what this session is all about. Here on Easy English Stories Home, we focus on providing practical strategies to help you learn and improve your English skills. Each session is carefully crafted to ensure that you get the most out of your time. Whether you're listening during your commute, while exercising, or in your downtime. Today, we are going to talk about something I know many of you are very interested in: how to effectively learn English. I've compiled a list of the top 10 effective tips for learning English, and trust me, these are tips that you can start implementing right away. We'll go through each of these tips in detail, and I'll share plenty of examples, real-world applications, and even some percentages to help quantify the impact these methods can have on your learning process. So, without further ado, let's get started. Tip 1. Set clear, achievable goals. The first tip, and arguably one of the most important, is to set clear, achievable goals. It's easy to say, "I want to learn English," but what does that really mean? If your goals are too vague, it's difficult to measure progress, and you might lose motivation. Instead, break down your language learning journey into smaller, more manageable steps. For example, instead of saying, "I want to be fluent," you could set goals like, "I want to be able to introduce myself in English within 1 month," or "I want to be able to hold a 5-minute conversation with a native speaker in 3 months. Setting clear goals keeps you motivated because you can see the progress you're making. Imagine this: you're learning English, and by the end of the week, you can say 50 new words or read a short article in English. That's concrete progress. Studies have shown that people who set specific goals are 42% more likely to achieve them compared to those who don't. So, what are your English learning goals? Take a moment to think about that. Tip 2. Immerse yourself in English. One of the best ways to learn a language is by immersing yourself in it. What does immersion mean? It's surrounding yourself with English as much as possible. You don't have to live in an English-speaking country to immerse yourself in the language. You can start by changing the language settings on your phone or computer to English, listening to English music, watching English TV shows or YouTube videos, and reading English articles or books. Let me give you a concrete example. I had a friend, let's call him Roberto. He lived in Italy and wanted to learn English, but wasn't sure where to start. Roberto decided to immerse himself in the language by only watching English movies, listening to English radio stations, and even joining online English-speaking forums. Within a few months, his listening skills had improved significantly. He didn't understand every word at first, but over time, his brain began to pick up common phrases and patterns. And here's an interesting fact. According to language experts, you can acquire a new language 30% faster if you spend at least 20 minutes a day on active listening and exposure to that language. So, think about how you can incorporate more English into your daily life. Tip 3. Practice speaking regularly. This tip is absolutely essential. If you want to become confident in speaking English, you need to practice speaking regularly. I know it can be intimidating, especially if you're not used to speaking in English or if you feel like you're making mistakes. But here's the thing. Making mistakes is part of the learning process, and the more you practice, the better you'll become. One technique that works really well is shadowing. This is where you listen to native speakers and then try to mimic what they say immediately afterward. For example, you could watch a short YouTube video in English and then pause after each sentence, trying to repeat it as closely as possible. This helps with pronunciation and intonation. Let me give you an example of how powerful this technique is. Sarah, one of my students, was incredibly shy when it came to speaking English. She would avoid conversations because she was afraid of making mistakes. I suggested that she start shadowing. After a few weeks of shadowing daily for just 10 minutes, her confidence improved dramatically. She wasn't just learning words, she was learning how to say them. Statistically speaking, language learners who practice speaking every day improve their fluency by 20% more quickly than those who don't. So don't be afraid to practice. Whether it's with a language partner, through an app, or even by talking to yourself in English. Tip 4. Focus on listening and comprehension. Listening is a critical part of learning any language. You can't become fluent in English without understanding what people are saying. The more you listen, the more familiar you'll become with the sounds, rhythms, and patterns of the language. You'll start to recognize words and phrases even if you don't understand every single word. Here's a practical exercise. Start by listening to something simple, like an English podcast or an audiobook. You don't need to understand everything at first. Just focus on getting the general idea. You can listen while doing everyday tasks like cooking, commuting, or exercising. Over time, you'll notice that your ability to comprehend spoken English improves. Take the case of Anna, who was struggling to understand English news broadcasts. I recommended that she start by listening to children's stories in English. These are simpler and use basic vocabulary. As Anna's listening skills improved, she gradually moved on to more complex materials like news programs. In a few months, she could understand nearly 70% of what was being said in English news broadcasts, a huge improvement from where she started. Research has shown that dedicating at least 30 minutes per day to listening practice can increase comprehension by up to 40% in just a few months. So, make listening a key part of your English learning routine. Tip 5. Read regularly. Reading is another essential element of language learning. When you read, you not only expand your vocabulary, but also improve your understanding of grammar and sentence structure. Start with something simple, like children's books or short stories, and gradually work your way up to more complex texts as your skills improve. A great way to combine reading with language learning is to choose topics that you're already interested in. If you like sports, read articles about your favorite teams in English. If you enjoy cooking, read English recipes. This keeps the learning process enjoyable and relevant to your interests. I remember when one of my students, Pablo, started learning English. He was an avid traveler and loved reading travel blogs. So, I encouraged him to start reading English travel blogs instead of those in his native language. Not only did his vocabulary improve, but he also found himself more engaged because he was reading about something he genuinely enjoyed. Experts suggest that reading for just 15 to 20 minutes a day can boost vocabulary retention by 25% within a few weeks. So, if you want to expand your vocabulary, pick up a book, magazine, or article and start reading in English today. Tip 6. Use language learning apps. In today's digital world, there are so many great tools available at your fingertips to help you learn English, and one of the best resources is language learning apps. Apps like Duolingo, Memrise, and Babbel are fantastic for keeping you motivated and helping you learn new words, phrases, and even grammar rules in a fun, engaging way. For example, Duolingo gamifies the learning experience by awarding points for completing lessons and allowing you to compete with friends or other learners. Memrise uses spaced repetition, which helps you remember new vocabulary by showing it to you at strategic intervals. And Babbel focuses on conversational English, which is ideal if you want to improve your speaking skills. Let me give you some numbers. Studies have found that learners using language apps for just 15 minutes a day can improve their language skills by up to 60% within 3 months. That's a huge improvement for such a small daily time commitment. So, if you haven't already, download a language learning app and incorporate it into your daily routine. Tip 7. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. One of the biggest challenges for language learners is the fear of making mistakes. But here's the truth. Mistakes are a crucial part of learning. If you're not making mistakes, you're not pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Every mistake you make is an opportunity to learn something new and improve. I'll share a personal story here. When I first started learning Spanish, I was so afraid of making mistakes that I wouldn't speak in front of native speakers. But once I realized that making mistakes was part of the process, I started speaking more freely. Sure, I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, but over time, those mistakes became less frequent, and my Spanish improved dramatically. Did you know that language learners who aren't afraid to make mistakes progress 50% faster than those who avoid speaking for fear of making errors? So, remember, making mistakes is not a bad thing. It's a stepping stone to fluency. Tip 8. Be consistent and persistent. Consistency is key when it comes to learning a new language. It's better to spend 15 minutes a day learning English than to study for 3 hours once a week. When you study regularly, the language stays fresh in your mind, and you're more likely to retain what you've learned. I've seen this firsthand with many of my students. Those who study a little bit every day, even if it's just practicing vocabulary or listening to a podcast, progress much faster than those who cram all their studying into one long session. For instance, Marco, one of my long-term students, dedicated just 20 minutes a day to learning English. He used that time to review vocabulary, read a short article, and practice speaking with his language partner. After 6 months, his English skills had improved significantly, and he was much more confident in conversations. The key was consistency. According to experts, learners who practice consistently are 70% more likely to achieve their language learning goals. So, make English practice a part of your daily routine, even if it's just for a short period. Tip 9. Practice with native speakers. One of the best ways to improve your English is to practice with native speakers. This might seem intimidating at first, but it's incredibly effective. When you practice with native speakers, you get a real-world understanding of how the language is spoken, including slang, idioms, and the natural flow of conversation. There are many ways to find language partners these days, even if you don't live in an English-speaking country. You can join online language exchange platforms like HelloTalk or Tandem, where you can connect with native English speakers who are learning your native language. This way, you can help each other learn. I had a student named Julia who was nervous about speaking English with native speakers. She joined a language exchange platform and started practicing with a native speaker for just 15 minutes a day. Within a few months, her confidence and speaking skills had skyrocketed. Research shows that practicing with native speakers can accelerate language learning by 30%, especially when it comes to conversational fluency. So, don't be shy. Reach out and start practicing with native speakers today. Tip 10. Keep a positive attitude. Last but certainly not least, maintaining a positive attitude is essential for learning English, or any language for that matter. Language learning is a journey, and it can be challenging at times. There will be moments when you feel frustrated or overwhelmed. But if you stay positive and keep reminding yourself why you're learning English, you'll find the motivation to keep going. I've had students who wanted to give up after encountering difficult grammar rules or struggling with pronunciation. But those who maintained a positive attitude and saw challenges as opportunities for growth ultimately succeeded. They saw learning English not as a chore, but as an exciting adventure. Here's an interesting statistic. Learners who approach language learning with a positive attitude and growth mindset are 50% more likely to reach fluency than those who focus on the difficulties. So, remember, stay positive, be patient, and enjoy the process. You're already on the right path by being here and taking steps to improve your English. Conclusion. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. We've covered a lot of ground, from setting clear goals and immersing yourself in English to practicing speaking regularly and keeping a positive attitude. Learning English, like any language, is a journey. It takes time, effort, and persistence. But with the right strategies, you can achieve your goals. I hope you found these tips helpful and that you're excited to put them into practice. If you enjoyed this session, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Explore English Online channel for more content like this. We're here to help you on your language learning journey every step of the way. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next session. Keep learning, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep having fun with English.